Welcome to the explainer video for Verbal Semantics, which is presented on our Grammar and Semantics page. For a general explanation about this page and the other layers here, please see the Semantics explainer video. This video will briefly explain what verbal analysis is, why it's important, and how to find your way around our resources. Let's begin by reading Psalm 3 verse 8 in the NASB translation. David says to God, "Arise, Lord, save me, my God, for you have struck all my enemies on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth of the wicked." But the NET says, "Yes, you will strike all my enemies on the jaw. You will break the teeth of the wicked." These are two completely different statements. In one, God has already struck the enemies in the past, and in the other, he will strike them in the future. But then you read the NIV, "Strike all my enemies on the jaw, break the teeth of the wicked." Here we have a command. And then the ESV, "For you strike all my enemies on the cheek, you break the teeth of the wicked." The present tense. The problem? Verbs, verbs, verbs. Probably one of the hardest parts of interpreting the Psalms is verbal analysis. Verbs in Hebrew are often ambiguous and unclear, but in the poetry of the Psalms they are especially unclear. There are verbs that are usually past tense, which can be used in the future, and future verbs which can be used in the past. There are other verb forms that can mean just about anything, and will often take on the meaning of other verbs around them. As you can see in this example from Psalm 3, these four interpretations, past, future, command, and present, change how you read the psalm as a whole. Is David asking God to save him because God has struck his enemies in the past? Or because he will strike them in the future? Or is he commanding God to strike them? Or just describing how God often strikes them? Our verbal analysis resources try to make sense of all the verbs in a psalm, how best to translate them, and how they fit together in the psalm as a whole. There are two main spaces in our resources, the notes and the verbal semantics chart. The notes are included in the Grammar and Semantics page alongside grammar, lexical, phrase level, and textual notes. Here you'll find a tab called Verbal, with notes and explanations for difficult verbs and discussion of different translations and interpretations. Then we have the Verbal Semantics chart. This is found near the top of the Grammar and Semantics page under the heading Psalm Number Verbal Semantics, and you can press the orange box there to expand and see it. This Verbal Semantics chart is a much more detailed resource where we do our in-depth analysis of each verb in the psalm and how they all fit together. This is quite a technical resource designed primarily for scholars, and we are currently developing a more user-friendly version to summarize this resource. But in brief, the chart has 6 main sections: text, morphology, time, modality, translation, and notes. The text section provides the Hebrew text with all verbs highlighted and colored. The morphology section analyzes the form of that verb and which kind of Hebrew verb it is. In the time section, we analyze the tense and aspect of the verb, as well as what we call reference point movement. These are then followed in the chart by modality, translation, and notes. All of these symbols and labels on this chart are explained in our Verbal Semantics legend, which is found at the top of each Psalms page in the About Verbal section. For detailed introductions to verbal semantics and the theory behind our methodology, as well as further explanation of all these key terms, see our user's guide, which also includes information of our overall method and other layers. We hope you'll find these resources helpful as you continue to dive deeply into the Psalms.